Hello, welcome to class today. So, we're going to look at scientific approach to research. So, remember in the last class, I asked the question, what do you think is the difference between scientific research and research, just like that? So, so scientific approach to research is always organized and systematic. By that we mean it follows certain steps. That's the difference, right? So in making inquiry into that new knowledge, that new thing, that new idea you're trying to find out, the new questions you're trying to answer, the gap in knowledge you're trying to fill up, if you're taking the scientific approach to that research, you must follow these 6 steps. So number one is you identify the problem, you define the problem in clear and precise terms, then you formulate appropriate hypothesis to that problem. You talk about you collect data, necessary data, because it's based on this data you analyze this data. Okay, sorry, collect the data, then you analyze the data. From there, you make your conclusion or your inference. So we're going to look at this one after the other. We're going to explain these 6 identifiable steps of scientific approach to research. So the first step is you identify your problems. Remember, we said research is not complete if it's not solving a problem. So how do you identify your problems? You can identify problems through observation. You look around you. What is it what changes are occurring? So here, when um we talk about health events in the context of public health, talk about health events or occurrences or issues that affect people, and they need to investigate them. For example, in the past few months, we had uh, an upsurge record in increased incidence of diphtheria in Mbise local government. I can't remember exactly which local government, but in Mbise precisely, right? So this is a problem, right? This is the first step. We can take another example. For example, you observe that there's increased rate of diarrhea cases among children in Owerri West local government. This is a problem. Another problem is you talk about high rate of maternal death, like pregnant women dying through pregnancy or after shortly after delivery. That's a problem too. So that's the first step to scientific approach of a scientific approach to research. So what's that problem? So as we go on in this class, I want you to personalize whatever example it is that apply to you. Maybe what you really want to work on, what you're already working on, identify that problem. So this will help you to know, to find out if your chosen topic, research topic, or your chosen research interest is it a problem. If this is a problem, then you're on the right track. So, for example, here in identifying problem, we could look at primary health care workers observing that many mothers come with their children to the clinic to report of increase in diarrhea. So this is a problem. Um, the You can also look at problems just like I stated, maternal death, like women are dying, high rates of maternal mortality. Reports are giving us reports that we get maybe in say Owerri West local government, Owerri municipal or Imo state is that pregnant women die from maternal complications. So this is your first step to scientific approach. Secondly, you define the problem in clear terms. Here, you have to be clear about it. There's no vagueness. For example, you're looking at children. Is it just children? What age group? Under five? Is it under five children? You're looking at women of reproductive age. Is it just pregnant women or women of what group of people are affected? So, in identifying the problem, you look at who is affected, where is the issue, where is the problem, where is this issue observed or where was this issue observed, and also you look at possible factors. Now, for example, take the examples that we we had we have with on the 5 children, increased rate of diarrhea. So you're looking at it, high prevalence is more of diarrhea is more on the 5 children. So you've found out, you've defined the age group that is affected. Where is it? In Owerri Municipal, Owerri West? Is it in Kano? Where is it? Where is this problem? Is it in Olu local government? Where exactly is this problem? Then the third one is what possible could be the cause. The water sources, where do they get their water from? So these are the things you need to do in the second step of this scientific approach to research. Identify, define the problem in clear terms. Then the third step to scientific the third step of scientific approach to research is to formulate your hypothesis. So hypothesis in a layman's language means just guess, right? But this in this context, that guess must be tested. So hypothesis is just a statement that shows a relationship between whatever thing you're testing. That's it shows relationship, it could show relationship. That statement could say there's a relationship or there's no relationship. So in hypothesis, we have two major forms, examples of hypothesis. We have the null hypothesis that is indicated with, as H subscript not zero, and we have the alternative hypothesis that is indicated as H subscript 1. So the null hypothesis usually tells us that, oh, there's no association, there's no significant relationship between, in this context, the example we have is there's no significant relationship between the diarrhea cases recorded among on the 5 children and the sources of water, where they drink water, where they get their water from. While alternative hypothesis will tell you there is a significant association or relationship between children with recorded cases of diarrhea and their sources of water. So this is what happens in the third steps. In the third step, then you move ahead to collect your data. That's the fourth step in scientific approach to research. So you collect your data. Data is just all about the information that would provide you with the information that will provide you with an insight to whatever conclusion you're going to do. For example, you're talking about diarrhea cases among on the 5 children in Owerri West local government, right? So the data, necessary data would be you'll be looking at their water sources, where do they get their drinking water? You'll be asking questions like, have you reported diarrhea cases in the last 1 month? You'll be looking at issues, collecting data based on their hand washing practices, their hygiene practices, their sanitation practices, right? So that's what we mean by collecting necessary data. So here you wouldn't bother yourself about collecting data on, say, for example, if um if they eat 2 or 3 times in a day. That's not really necessary for the problem you're trying to make inquiry about. So that is what you do in collecting data. And remember, we have quantitative data and qualitative data. Quantitative data usually emphasize on issues. It tells you this type of data tells you how much is affected, how much of the group is affected. For example, what percentage of children are affected, what's the prevalence of diarrhea. It tells, it quantifies the degree, the extent to which the problem is. While qualitative data, it tells you the reasons, tells us the why of whatever. So in qualitative data, you're asking why do children have diarrhea cases? So in a collection of this necessary data, you can use different forms depending on your study design, right? You can use questionnaire, list of questions, necessary questions, you share to their caregivers, say their mothers or primary health workers. You can also use methods like interviews, interview mothers of these children, on the 5 children. You can also interview primary health workers who provide care at health clinics to these children. You can also use observation. You're observing the rate of the incidence of diarrhea. You also use methods like lab tests, take water samples and check out for the presence of bacteria, diarrhea causing organisms. These are things that provide you with the data, necessary data that you need, that would help you make conclusion as to why there's high incidence of diarrhea cases among children in the West. So when you're done collecting data, the fifth step is, remember we're talking about scientific approach to research, right? So the fifth step in this approach is to analyze your data. Now you're done collecting data. Data at this point, a lot of data you've collected that would be necessary for you to make your conclusion. But then you've not made any sense out of it. You can't say how many percentage of children, you can't say the prevalence of diarrhea cases, you can't say how much or how well mothers wash their hands or observe or adhere to um, good sanitation practices until you analyze the data. So when you're done collecting the data, you have to clean the data. In cleaning, you take away incomplete information, people who didn't complete your questionnaire, you get rid of those, organize your data, impute here. This is also where you impute your data in softwares. Of course, you can't, if you're dealing with a large number of persons, you won't add it up manually. So here, softwares like SPSS, Stata, Python, R, Excel, depending on what you want to use, will be helpful to help you analyze your data. So all you enter, we talk about entering the data in the software. Now when you're done doing that, you as a researcher in this context would have to compare the data across board. For example, in this case, you have to compare um, the data on water sources, so number of children or caregivers, mothers who drink water from well, borehole, rivers, and all of that. You have to compare the different sources of water and the occurrence of diarrhea among those children. So this is what you use here. Also, in analysis of data, you use test statistics. We have a lot of them: independent t-test, chi-square test. You have to consult your statistician, and you have to use the necessary test statistics to know if there's a relationship between diarrhea cases, as you've stated, as a problem, and water sources. Now, the last step in this approach, scientific approach to not to research, is to draw your conclusion. At this point in time, you've analyzed your data. It's now time for you to interpret your data. So what you do here is, based on your results, you're not going to make interpretations outside the results you've analyzed. Based on your results, you could tell us what you found out. For example, in this case, we could, based on your study, you could find out that children who drink water from untreated sources of water have more diarrhea cases. That could be a result. While you could find otherwise, based on your, depending on what you found out in your result, you make your conclusions. So your conclusions here would be that poor water quality or poor water sources is a huge contributor. It has a relationship between diarrhea cases. So this is where you make sense of all of these things. You have to analyze. You have to interpret your results and make conclusion. This is where all the data, all the numbers, all the figures, this is where it makes sense. Now, as a public health student, what is the implication of this result? If poor water quality increases rates of diarrhea cases, what does it tell you? What's the public health implications? So it would mean that there is need to improve what water supply. That could be one. It could also mean that there's need to enlighten mothers, caregivers, on the use of treated water, hmm? Or how to treat water. Boiling, distillation, filtration, decantation, sedimentation, and all of those water treatment could be. That's the public health implications. Another thing would mean that government should really intervene on sanitation, provide appropriate waste disposal, provide um, water, good water for for the citizens to. So these are all public health implications. So now you would really understand why I said earlier that research helps you to make sense out of the word in debate. It helps you to make sense out of what ordinarily, if you didn't go ahead to make that research, it will help you to make sense about that. I hope you enjoyed the class and I hope you're able to state the six identifiable steps of scientific approach to results. So, as a form of recap, we talked about research taking the scientific approach, and we said for research to take the scientific approach, it must be organized and systematic. And we looked at six steps for a research to be scientific. It has to identify a problem, identify the problem, you define the problem in clear terms, who is affected, where is it affected, what are possible factors that could affect that. Then you formulate your hypothesis, and we said that hypotheses are just mere guesses, statements that should be tested with your test statistics as you go along your research. Now, the fourth one is you have to collect your data. Remember, we said that data can be quantitative, data can be qualitative. Quantitative data has to tell you how much is affected, how much people, how much of the issue you can quantify it. Why qualitative research will tell you why, the reasons behind it. And we said that you can collect your data through interviews, questionnaires, observations, laboratory tests, etc., etc. Then the fifth one is you go ahead to analyze your data using, use a lot of softwares now that can help you. I when you come to analysis, I remember that then what do you call it, in maths class, secondary school, they'll tell you to do tally, one, two, three, tendencies, mean, median, mode. But of course, when you're dealing with large data, you will really need this software handy. So that's why you use software to impute whatever thing you've collected as your data. In that software, you analyze it. And then from your analysis, you test the hypothesis. Earlier on those statements you've made, you test them using the test statistics. We mentioned examples of them like chi-square, independent t-test, and the rest of them. Then when you're done analyzing, you can, form based on what your data says, you can make your conclusions. And based on that conclusions, you know the public health implications and you can make your recommendations. I hope you enjoyed the class. Until we see later, Bye.